Metaphors. We're talking about metaphors today. And metaphors is probably one of the most fun things to talk about in English language because there's so many of them and we use them a lot and more than we would think. So the first thing to understand about metaphors is that it is a type of figurative language. And so question number one, what is figurative language? So first understand this. There are two ways you can write or you can say something. You can say it literally or you can say it figuratively. You can say it using literal language or you can say it using figurative language. And so literal language is when the words said mean exactly what they are supposed to mean. So with literal language, the sentence means what it says. What I'm saying means what I'm saying, exactly how it is. But however, figurative language is the opposite of that. Figurative language is when the words said do not mean what they are supposed to mean. So with literal language, the sentence does not mean what it says. So there's a deeper meaning to it that you have to figure out. And so, for example, literal language. If I were to say, I love you, that's literal. The words that I'm saying mean exactly what they're supposed to mean. But with figurative language, for example, I might say, you are the light of my world. Right? I don't really mean you are the light of my world. You can't actually be the light of my world or the world. But what I'm trying to say using figurative language, and specifically by using a metaphor, is that you are important in my life or you are special in my life. That's what I literally mean by using that figurative language. And so one type of figurative language we will go over today are metaphors. So question number 2, what is a metaphor? So metaphors are a type of figurative language that says something about the subject of a sentence by comparing it to something else. It's comparing two things to each other, and usually two things that are very different from each other. So a metaphor will connect the thing being talked about to something very different from itself. Question 3. Here are some examples of a metaphor. How do I analyze a metaphor and infer its meaning? How do I figure out its meaning? So here's an example. Education was the ladder to my success. So we're going to analyze this sentence, and we're going to understand the small parts of it to understand the whole thing. So the first thing to ask yourself when you are trying to analyze a metaphor is this literal or figurative language being used? So education was a ladder to my success. Can education really be a ladder? If it can be a ladder, then most likely probably using figurative language. So the answer to that is it literal or figurative language being used? That is figurative language. Okay. So then the next question to ask yourself is, what two very different things are being compared to each other? If it is a metaphor, then two things are being compared. And so in this case, education is being compared to a ladder. Okay. Now the next step to fully understand a metaphor is, what do we know about the thing that the subject is being compared to? Okay, so the subject of the sentence is education. And so what do we know about the thing that it's being compared to? It's being compared to a ladder. We know that ladders help us go up. They help us reach things. We know they're very tall. We know that that they're kind of heavy, right? So you want to think about all the things that you possibly know and then try to connect it to the subject. What is it? How is it connected to the subject, and what might the sentence be saying? And so, understanding those parts, we can kind of equal or get to our answer. So, based on the information, based on our analysis, I infer that the metaphor means that education helped reach success. Education helped them be successful. And so that's what that metaphor means. This next one. Eric's text message felt like shards of glass to Mary when she read it. Okay, so is this literal or figurative language being used? This is figurative language. And so, what two very different things are being compared to each other? Well, Eric's text message is being compared to shards of glass. Okay, shards of glass are little broken pieces of glass. And so, what do we know about the thing that the subject is being compared to? What do we know about shards of glass? We know shards of glass are, you just think of anything to first think of anything to then make a connection. We know that shards of glass are small. We know that they are sharp. They're broken. They can cut you. You don't really want to touch them. Okay? And so understanding that, you can then come to a conclusion. You can then infer what the metaphor means. And so in this case, Eric's text message felt like a shards of glass to Mary when she read it. Based on the information, I infer the metaphor means that Eric's text message emotionally hurt Mary when she read it. Okay? Now, that metaphor, it didn't actually say it hurt. Well, it said it in a very creative way, and that's the power of metaphors. When you use a metaphor, you're saying something and connecting it to something to something else in order to say it in a very creative, powerful way. Now, if I were to just say Eric's text message hurt Mary, okay, you know what I'm saying, but it's more powerful if I use a metaphor. And by saying Eric's text message felt like shards of glass to Mary, that is much more creative and powerful way of saying it. Let's look at a last example here. Scars are the roadmap to the soul. Scars are the roadmap to the soul. Okay. This is a tough one. And so let's first analyze it, understand it in its small parts. Is it literal or figurative language being used? It's figurative language, for sure. Now, what two very different things are being compared to each other? Well, in this case, scars are being compared to a roadmap. Okay? All right. What do we know about the thing that the subject is being compared to? What do we know about roadmaps? We know roadmaps give us directions. They help us get somewhere. We know that roadmaps show us different places. Okay? And so thinking of it as a whole, what does that equal? Scars are the roadmap to the soul. What is that metaphor trying to say? And another thing to understand about metaphors is different people may think of different meanings, may come to different conclusions. So not everyone's interpretation or understanding of the metaphor will be the same, but there should be a connection to be made. And so my understanding of that metaphor is scars are the roadmap to the soul. Is that means that the things that hurt us are the things that hurt us in life help us better understand ourselves. The things that hurt us help us better understand who we are. Yeah? So that is an example of a metaphor as well. So those are your notes to have taken down and to use as I challenge you to think about metaphors and do the rest of the Hope Project. If you need any further help, do not hesitate to stop and ask me to come over and help you with anything you need. Okay? Thanks.